hash the golden city they found and buried forever. What if I told you that the most legendary lost city in human history was never actually lost? What if the Spanish conquistadors, those brutal treasure hunters who burned empires to the ground for gold, actually found what they were looking for, and then deliberately erased it from every map, every record, every letter they ever sent home? Tonight, we pull back the curtain on one of the greatest cover-ups in the history of Western civilization. This is the story they killed to keep silent. For centuries, this was hidden from the world. The legend of El Dorado, the city of gold, has haunted explorers, adventurers, and treasure hunters for over 500 years. We were taught in school that El Dorado was a myth, a fever dream born in the desperate minds of greedy men stumbling through jungles they didn't understand. Generations of historians have written it off as nothing more than a cautionary tale about obsession and greed. But what historians don't tell you is that the earliest Spanish accounts didn't describe a fantasy. They described a destination. They described coordinates. They described a place that real people had visited and returned from, carrying gold so pure it bent like cloth in their hands. Let's go back to the beginning. The year is 1537. Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada is leading an expedition of 800 men into the highlands of present-day Colombia. They are starving. They are dying of tropical diseases. They have already lost more than half their men to the unforgiving wilderness. And then, emerging from the cloud forests of the Andes, they encounter the Muisca people, a confederation so wealthy that their chieftain performed a ritual that would birth the most dangerous legend the New World ever produced. The new ruler would be covered head to toe in gold dust and rode to the center of Lake Guatavitá, where he would wash the gold from his body as an offering to the gods beneath the water. The Spanish watched this, they documented it, and their minds fractured with a single consuming thought. If this is what they throw away, imagine what they keep. But here is where the story takes its dark turn. Quesada's expedition wasn't the only one searching. From the south, Sebastián de Belalcázar was pushing north from Ecuador. From the east, the German explorer Nikolaus Federmann was cutting through Venezuela. 3 expeditions, launched independently, all converging on the same location at nearly the same time. Think about that. 3 separate European powers, guided by 3 separate sets of indigenous testimony, all pointing to the same place. This was not a myth being chased. This was intelligence being acted upon. The truth was buried for a reason. When these 3 expeditions finally met in the Muisca highlands in 1539, something happened that the official records only hint at. Quesada had already spent months among the Muisca. He had already cataloged their gold-working techniques, their trade routes, their sacred sites, letters from junior officers in his company, letters that survived only because they were sent on unauthorized ships, describe storehouses, not small collections, storehouses. Underground chambers lined with gold artifacts, ceremonial pieces, and ingots of a gold alloy so refined that modern metallurgists would struggle to replicate it. One letter, now kept in a private collection in Seville and never formally published, describes a valley settlement roughly 3 days' march south of Guatavita, where the Muisca kept what the author called the treasury of all their nations. So what happened to it? This changes everything we thought we knew about the conquest of South America. The standard history tells us that the 3 conquistadors argued over who had the right to claim the territory, and they eventually returned to Spain to let the crown settle the dispute. But fragments of testimony from the legal proceedings that followed reveal something astonishing. Quesada, Belalcázar, and Federmann made a private agreement before they left the highlands. They agreed to underreport what they had found. Not because they wanted to share it, but because they understood that if the Spanish crown knew the true extent of the Muisca wealth, the region would be flooded with royal soldiers and administrators. The 3 of them would lose control. They would become footnotes in someone else's empire. So they did something unthinkable. They lied to the king. They described the Muisca as moderately wealthy. They sent back enough gold to seem credible, but not enough to trigger a full-scale royal invasion. And then, over the following years, they systematically dismantled the evidence. Muisca settlements were burned, not just conquered. Maps were redrawn. Indigenous guides who knew the locations of sacred treasury sites were killed or relocated. The very people who could verify what had been found were silenced permanently. The evidence survives in the cracks. In 1577, nearly 40 years after the initial conquest, a Muisca elder named Don Diego de Torres petitioned the Spanish courts for the return of his people's ancestral lands. Buried in his testimony, recorded by a court scribe who clearly did not understand its significance, is a passage describing the 7 houses of gold that the bearded men took beneath the earth and sealed with stones so that no other bearded men might find them. 7 houses sealed, hidden not from the Muisca, but from other Spaniards. In 1911, a British company attempted to drain Lake Guatavitá entirely, believing El Dorado's treasure lay at the bottom. They found gold, significant quantities of it, but the lake bed also revealed something strange. Channels had been carved into the rock beneath the water, channels that were clearly man-made but did not match any known Muisca construction technique. They matched Spanish mining engineering of the 16th century. Someone had already been there, someone had already dug, and someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make it look like they hadn't. Modern satellite imaging has added another layer to this mystery. In 2016, Colombian researchers using LiDAR technology to map the cloud forests near Guatavita detected geometric anomalies beneath the canopy, rectangular formations consistent with large-scale construction, arranged in a pattern that doesn't match any known Muisca architectural style, but does match the layout of Spanish colonial treasury vaults found in Mexico and Peru. The Colombian government quietly restricted access to the area, citing environmental protection. No formal archaeological survey has ever been conducted at the site. The question is, why? Here is what we are left with. 3 conquistadors who found something extraordinary and chose to hide it from their own king. Indigenous testimony describing sealed underground vaults. A lake that shows evidence of secret Spanish excavation. And satellite imagery revealing structures that no one is allowed to investigate. El Dorado was never a city of golden streets and gleaming towers. It was a network of Muisca treasury sites, scattered across the Colombian highlands, containing wealth that 3 desperate men decided the world could never know about. They didn't fail to find the city of gold. They found it, looted what they could carry, sealed the rest, and then spent the rest of their lives building the myth that it never existed at all. The greatest trick in the history of exploration was convincing the world that El Dorado was just a legend. 500 years later, the gold is still there. Beneath the cloud forests, beneath the sealed chambers, beneath centuries of deliberate misdirection. And the only thing standing between the world and the truth is the will to dig. But this isn't the only secret the conquistadors buried in the Americas. Next week on Historical Secrets, we investigate the lost Spanish silver fleet of 1559. 12 ships carrying enough wealth to fund a European war that vanished without a single trace, without a single survivor, in waters that were perfectly calm. The official explanation will make your blood run cold. Make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on so you don't miss it. If this video made you question what you thought you knew, share it with someone who deserves to know the truth. Until next time, stay curious and never trust the official story.